Page 34, Song of the Volga Boatman. They're not introducing anything new, really. The stuff you've had before, we're just using it now. They went back and they're using these tenuto lines again to try and indicate where the melody is. It's unnecessary. You should be able to figure out where the melody is in most cases. If you're going to point it out in the left hand, then why don't you point it out in the right hand? I don't understand their logic that they're doing here, but they've done it. This is what they're doing, so okay, fine. 4/4 time, it's marked largo as a tempo or the speed. Largo is very slow. Okay, largo is really slow. About the speed we play it anyway. In the first two lines, the melody's in the left hand, you'll bring that out. In the next two lines, third and fourth lines, the melody's in the right hand, so you bring that out. Then in the last line, the melody goes back to the left hand. Now, the piece starts out medium loud. Down on the third line, it goes to loud. And the last line is really loud, except for the last two measures. And then it dies away to medium soft. So it's like, well, that's interesting. Now you have a swell, what I call a swell, in the second line in those first two measures. It's the hairpins. You have facing hairpins. And when it tells you to get louder and then it gets softer like that, I call that a swell. You're kind of swelling up and then coming back down. And that's really what's happening. So for those two measures, it's start out with medium loud, louder, come down, and back where you were. So you're thinking getting louder and getting softer on that. In the fourth line, you have a crescendo. So you're going to go from loud, which is where you are, up to very loud, which is a little louder than loud, not a lot louder, just a little louder, over three measures. So just take your time. You could get away with actually not doing any crescendo at all until the last measure of the fourth line. Right? It's better to wait too long than to get loud too soon. You don't want to be loud by the third measure. It's too soon. You don't want to be very loud by the third measure of the fourth line. That's too soon. You got to wait until the first measure of the last line to get very loud. So you're just working up to it. Okay? Just make sure the first measure of the last line is louder than the last measure of the fourth line, the measure right in front of it. So you'll have to experiment and figure out how louder and softer you got to get over time on that. Let's talk about the right hand first. Anything going on the right hand? Well, at the beginning you got the chords, no big deal. You can do that, I hope. Then in the third line down, when the right hand gets the melody, the first note would be played with the index finger because you're coming off the chords from the measure before. You were here. So you play that here. Then they're suggesting the 5 on the next F. It's unnecessary. You want the 5 to be on the F in the second measure of the third line. That's where you need the 5. So in the first measure of the third line, you start with the index. You could just as easily use the 3 or the 4 on the next F. And then the 5. You don't have to go straight to the 5 when you have a note in between. Because it's slurred, it's connected, or more or less connected as best you can. You don't want a break in there. So I would recommend using maybe the third finger on the second F in that first measure of the third line. There's a lot of numbers in this thing, isn't there? Now, in the fourth line, second measure, the first D is played with the index finger, because that's where you are. Then the second D is with the thumb. That's fine, because they're right next to each other. You can do that. And then you're ready for the B flat in the next measure. Okay. In the last line, last two measures, right hand, you're here, and here, and then the last measure, index finger on the A. You have a quarter rest, so you got plenty of time. Okay. For the left hand, Starts out with the left hand getting the melody here. Okay. At the last measure, the first line, you use the little finger to play the D. They want you to use the little finger again to play the E. Just go up one key. Because you need the fourth finger for the F on the next measure. And this works out okay because it's between phrases and you want a little bit of silence. You will get that in the time it takes you to go from little finger here to little finger here. It's fine. Now on the second line, left hand, first measure, you have 4 on the F, second on the B flat, I like that. The tendency is to use the thumb. Unnecessary, let's not. Second finger, and then the thumb on the A. Okay. Now in the third line down, you're in this position, playing the chords just fine. And the last measure of that line, that they're suggesting a 3-1. Now you're using the thumb on the B flat. It's okay because you're not doing anything but playing chords. Not anything too intricate here. And in the next measure, that is the first measure of the fourth line, it's a 2-1. That's fine. So shouldn't be a problem with that. The thumb on the B flat works fine in those cases. Last line. You're coming from this position. Now they want the fourth finger on the G again. It's okay, it's not a problem. You can go from here to here. You don't have to connect the chord in here because the chord is accompaniment and this is now melody, so it's fine. Then the fingering for the last line is similar to the fingering for the second line. It's very similar. Let's try this together and see what happens. Could be fun, who knows. 4 times, so give us 4 counts. Slowly. Put your hands where they go, right hand's here, left hand's here. Alright. 1, 2, ready, go.